All right, diving into the 17th century today, huh? We've got excerpts on Lord Shaftesbury, and he seems, well, a bit less stuffy than your average philosopher from what I've seen.
Definitely less stuffy. Shaftesbury was really big on making philosophy practical, like how can this stuff actually help us live better lives, not just be abstract theories?
I like that. It's almost like philosophy as self-help, but way before that was a thing. So the outline says his life is important. Good place to start.
Oh yeah, his background is fascinating. Grandson of an earl, get this, tutored by John Locke.
Wait, hold on. The John Locke. Life, liberty, property, that guy.
Yep, that's the one. Although later on, Shaftesbury disagreed with him about innate ideas, which, hey, maybe we'll get into that. Sadly, though, Shaftesbury's political career got cut short, illness, early 30s, so maybe that pushed him even more into this whole philosophy for living thing.
Makes sense. So less about stirring up revolutions out there, more about an inner revolution.
Exactly. And one thing that jumps out is how he defines virtue. None of that selfish gain stuff. True virtue, for him, was aiming for the good of all humanity.
Whoa, that's pretty radical, right?
Yeah.
Back then, wasn't it all about, like, individual salvation or grabbing power?
You're catching on quick. Most ethical systems were focused on the individual, but Shaftesbury, he's almost like a proto-utilitarian, way ahead of his time. A virtuous person acts for everyone's benefit, not just themselves or some small group.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, the moral sense. He thought we have a sense not just for the physical world, but for judging our own emotions. Like, we feel approval for kindness, but dislike cruelty. And that's the root of morality.
Precisely. It's as natural as sight or hearing, he argued. This moral sense, it's how we perceive moral qualities. We feel approval for actions that align with the good of the whole, and disapproval, for selfish or harmful ones. He even compares it to our sense of beauty. We just know when something's harmonious, well-proportioned.
Okay, but wait. If morality is a feeling, doesn't that make it totally subjective? What feels good to one person might horrify someone else.
Excellent question. Shaftesbury gets really nuanced here. He does believe there's an objective right and wrong, a true good, but we don't access it purely through intellect. It's through this feeling, this moral sense. It's how we're designed to grasp that moral order.
So it's almost like our feelings are tuned to some universal frequency of goodness. That's a wild concept.
It is. And it brings up more questions, of course, like how do we reconcile the moral sense with reason? What if we feel something's wrong, but our logic says it's advantageous? How do those two forces work together?
Yeah, that's a huge point. Does he think reason has any way role in morality, or is it all just gut feeling?
He values reason, but not in the way you might think. It's not cold calculation to find the most ethical action. For Shaftesbury, reason helps us reflect on our moral sense, understand it better. We cultivate, refine those feelings, strengthening our love for virtue and weakening, well, our attraction to vice.
So it's like our feelings point us in the right direction, and then reason helps us fine-tune our moral compass.
Exactly. By reflecting on our moral sense, we train ourselves to be more virtuous. And this connects to his views on happiness, too. Not fleeting pleasures, but a deeper happiness from living in accordance with virtue.
So not being good for a reward, but because being good, the reward, the path to true happiness.
Precisely. That inner harmony, that's what he's after. Which leads us to another fascinating bit, beauty.
I gotta hear, he wasn't just talking about pretty paintings.
Yeah.
It's like beauty was woven into everything for him.
You got it. Art, sure, but nature, virtuous character, even the universe itself. The core of beauty for him was unity in design. Everything working together harmoniously, like, well, a well-composed piece of music.
So for Shaftesbury, a beautiful sunset and a morally good person share some fundamental quality. That's bold.
Very bold. He even says beauty and good are one and the same. Now, that puzzles a lot of philosophers, even seems nonsensical. But remember, for him, both are rooted in this idea of harmony. A virtuous person, they embody that same unity in design we see in art, in nature. It's a reflection of that fundamental order.
Wow, okay, so beauty isn't just surface level, it's deeply tied to his whole ethical system.
Exactly. And to make it even more complex, this beauty ties into his religious views, too.
Yeah, in the excerpts, I noticed he wasn't shy about critiquing religion, even though he was religious. He wasn't into just blindly accepting miracles or scriptures, was he?
Not at all. He was all about grounding faith in reason and what we can observe,
Right.
really skeptical of those who claimed some special divine hotline or tried to force their beliefs on others.
So where did he stand on God then? Did he even believe?
He did, but his argument's interesting. He liked the argument from design, the idea that the world's order, its complexity, points to a designer. Think of a watch, it had a watchmaker. For Shaftesbury, the universe is this grand clock, and its order points to a divine clockmaker.
So the beauty and order of the universe, that was his evidence for God.
Exactly. And here's where it gets tricky. While he emphasizes reason, there's a hint of feeling playing a role, too. He talks about that awe, the wonder we feel looking at nature's beauty. That feeling seems to strengthen his belief. It's almost like an aesthetic experience can be a religious experience for him.
Okay, my mind is kind of blown here. Beauty, morality, religion, all woven together. I'm seeing why he's considered such a unique figure.
He truly is. And we haven't even touched on his ideas about ridicule, which are, let's just say, provocative.
Oh, I got to hear this. The outline mentioned he thought making fun of bad ideas was a good thing. That's counterintuitive.
You're telling me. But Shaftesbury thought good-natured ridicule could actually help uncover truth, like a way to test ideas. Flimsy ones, illogical ones, they'd crumble under well-aimed wit. But solid ideas, grounded in truth and reason, they'd remain standing.
So it's like a stress test for ideas. The ones that can take a joke are probably the ones worth keeping.
Precisely. This ties into his belief in free speech. Open debate, letting all ideas out, even the ridiculous ones, helps us sort the good from the bad.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Reason, dialogue, testing our beliefs. It's all about active engagement, not just accepting things passively.
You nailed it. That's key to Shaftesbury. And his ideas about ridicule, as controversial as they are, they perfectly illustrate that active engagement.
This is so much richer than I expected. We've only scratched the surface, and I feel like I'm seeing the world differently already.
We're just getting started. There's so much more to unpack. Next, we can dive deeper into his critique of religious dogma, see how that relates to reason, experience, and the search for truth.
I can't wait. This is one deep dive I won't forget anytime soon. So we've got this whole beauty, virtue, religion thing connected in Shaftesbury's mind. But he was politically active too, right? How do those philosophical ideas play out in real-world politics?
That's a great question, and you really see those connections in his political thought, too. He was a huge advocate for liberty, freedom of speech, tolerance, limited government power, ideas way ahead of their time.
And from what I gathered, he believed in open dialogue, almost like a marketplace of ideas where the best ones naturally went out. Am I on the right track?
Spot on. Shaftesbury saw attempts to suppress ideas, whether from the government or the church, as ultimately harmful. He believed that truth could withstand scrutiny, that censorship was basically a sign of weakness. Like, people are afraid to let reason shine a light on beliefs that might be flawed.
So not about silencing opposition, but letting everyone have their say and trusting that the good ideas will eventually prevail. It's a pretty optimistic view of human nature, isn't it?
It is, and that's where his concept of the moral sense comes back in. Remember, he believed we've got this innate capacity to recognize what's good and right. So a society that allows maximum liberty, that's what allows this moral sense to flourish, leading to better choices, both individually and for the whole community.
But was he advocating for total anarchy? I mean, he had to recognize the need for some kind of structure, some form of government, right?
Of course, Shaftesbury wasn't some pie-in-the-sky utopian. He understood the need for laws and a stable society. But he thought the role of government should be limited, protecting individual liberty, creating conditions where a good society could flourish. He was very wary of any attempts to impose morality or religious uniformity using force.
So would it be fair to call him an early liberal? Focused on individual rights, limited government, that sort of thing.
There are definite parallels, but it's super important to consider the historical context. Shaftesbury was a Whig, deeply involved in the political battles of his time. His thinking was shaped by the fight against the monarchy's tendency toward absolute power. He wanted a more balanced power structure, more freedom for individuals to pursue their own good without a lot of interference.
But it wasn't just about partisan politics for him, right? His ideas about liberty seem to have a deeper, more philosophical root.
Absolutely right. For Shaftesbury, liberty wasn't just a political tactic. It was essential for humans to truly thrive. He believed that without freedom, we can't fully develop our character or build a genuinely just society. Virtue, remember, required the ability to choose, to be responsible for your actions, and that only works in a free society.
So it's not just freedom from things like tyranny or oppression. It's about the freedom to act in accordance with your moral compass, which he believed was leading us towards the good of everyone.
Exactly. And that's the elegant symmetry of his thinking. He saw individual liberty as not just helpful for, but actually necessary for developing virtuous citizens. In a free society, our moral sense can steer us towards choices that benefit both us and the community. A win-win in his view.
Let's be real, though. He wasn't naive about the challenges of self-government, was he? People can be selfish, short-sighted, ruled by passions more than reason.
Oh, definitely not. Shaftesbury was no idealist. He knew there would always be conflict, disagreements, and building a just society takes constant work. It's this ongoing process of refining things, striving for that harmony he valued so much.
And is this where the whole test of ridicule comes in? He thought humor and satire could keep us honest, challenge those who might abuse power.
Precisely. He thought laughter could be a weapon against tyranny and hypocrisy. Ridicule, used well, could deflate pompous pronouncements, expose the flaws in bad logic, make those in power really think twice before doing something unjust.
So it's not just about cracking jokes, it's about using wit and satire to point out what's wrong, push for a more just and fair society.
Exactly. He thought a truly free society should encourage that kind of critical humor, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. It's a sign of a healthy democracy, being willing to laugh at ourselves and use humor as a force for positive change.
But he drew a line, didn't he? Between true raillery and what he called scurrilous buffoonery. There's a right way and a wrong way to use ridicule.
Absolutely. That distinction is key. True raillery for Shaftesbury was witty, insightful, meant to expose falsehood and promote virtue. It had a purpose beyond just laughs. Scurrilous buffoonery was crude, offensive, lacking real substance. It could actually harm the search for truth and justice.
It's like, think of a political cartoon making a sharp point about corruption versus a comedian relying on cheap insults and stereotypes. One elevates the conversation, the other just drags it down.
A perfect analogy. Shaftesbury would approve. He believed that when done right, ridicule serves truth and makes society better. It's like holding up a mirror to our flaws, using humor to show where we fall short of our ideals.
This all goes back to his core philosophy, doesn't it? That interconnectedness of beauty, goodness, truth. Even his ideas about humor reflect this desire for harmony, aligning ourselves with what's truly good and right.
Exactly. Remember, beauty for Shaftesbury wasn't superficial. It reflected a deeper harmony and order, both in the world and within us. Ridicule was a way to show what disrupts that harmony, whether it's a crooked politician, a hypocritical religious figure, or just a bad idea holding us back.
It's amazing how he takes these seemingly separate things, philosophy, politics, humor, and weaves them into a cohesive vision of how we should live and organize ourselves. It's really refreshing.
I agree. He was a true original, challenging the norms and giving us a fresh perspective on some of life's biggest questions. And the amazing thing is, so much of what he said still resonates today.
Absolutely. His emphasis on liberty, tolerance, open dialogue, it feels especially important in our current climate.
It's almost eerie how relevant his work feels, even centuries later. It reminds us that the pursuit of truth and justice never ends. We have to stay vigilant, think critically, be willing to challenge those in power, and use whatever tools we have, including humor, to strive for a better world.
And his points about responsible ridicule, avoiding cruelty and mean-spiritedness, those are crucial too. It's so easy to fall into that trap of just tearing people down online, especially when we disagree.
You're right. Shaftesbury would probably be appalled by how much vitriol and negativity dominates online discussions these days. He believed in challenging ideas, yes, but doing it with wit and grace, always aiming to make society better, not just scoring points or resorting to personal attacks.
It's a high standard he sets, but one worth striving for, I think. Using our voices, our wit, even our laughter, to lift each other up and create a more just and harmonious world.
Beautifully put. And speaking of lifting each other up, I think it's time we shift gears and look at another fascinating aspect of Shaftesbury's thought, his views on religion. This is where he gets particularly radical and insightful, especially for his time.
I'm all ears. From what I've seen, he was a religious man, but not in a conventional sense. He had some pretty strong critiques of blind faith and religious dogma.
You're picking up on something really important. Shaftesbury was deeply skeptical of any belief that couldn't be backed up by reason or observation. He had zero patience for claims of divine revelation or attempts to force religion on people through coercion.
So was he more of a deist then? Someone who believes in God but rejects organized religion and all the supernatural stuff?
There are definite similarities, but it's crucial to remember the context. He was writing in a time of huge religious debate and change in England. He was raised Anglican, but got exposed to a wide range of philosophical and religious ideas through his education and travels. His views were shaped by both his own experiences and his critical engagement with the main religious ideas of his day.
So he wasn't just some rebellious teenager rejecting authority for no reason. He was genuinely trying to find a way to reconcile faith with reason, with what he saw in the world around him.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is that even though he rejected blind faith, he still had this deeply spiritual side. His spirituality came from a love for the divine as it's revealed through the natural world, not dogma or scripture.
So, did he see God as some kind of force within nature? Was he more of a pantheist?
There are definitely echoes of pantheism in his thought, but he was also careful to separate himself from atheists and materialists who denied any kind of spiritual reality. He believed in a divine creator, but one whose wisdom and goodness were obvious in the beauty and order of the universe, not through supernatural interventions or pronouncements.
So he's kind of forging his own path here, isn't he? He's not just following one specific school of thought. He's taking ideas from different places and creating his own unique vision of faith and spirituality.
You've got it. He was an independent thinker, not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom and come up with something new. And his criticism of religious dogma comes from that independence. He thought too much emphasis on rules and doctrines actually suffocated true religious feeling, leading to hypocrisy and intolerance.
So for him, it's less about following the rules strictly and more about the spirit of religion, about developing good character, living in harmony with nature, and feeling a sense of awe and wonder at the beauty and complexity of the universe.
Beautifully said. That's the core of Shaftesbury's religious view. True faith is about aligning yourself with divine order, not blindly obeying authorities. And that experiential dimension is crucial. It's not just about intellectually agreeing with doctrines, it's about having a direct, personal experience with the divine.
It's like he's saying we need to open ourselves up to the beauty and wonder of the world, let ourselves be moved by that divine presence that he thought permeates all of creation.
Exactly. And he believed this kind of spiritual experience was possible for everyone, regardless of their background or specific beliefs. It's about cultivating that sense of awe and wonder that connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
This reminds me of that William Blake quote, "To see a world in a grain of sand, recognizing the divine in even the smallest, most ordinary parts of creation."
Shaftesbury would have loved that. He believed the divine was present in everything, that we could experience the infinite and eternal just by contemplating even the smallest details of nature. It's a beautiful and profound vision of spirituality that goes beyond the limits of organized religion.
And it all connects back to his moral sense, doesn't it? This natural ability to see and appreciate beauty and goodness as a reflection of the divine within us.
Absolutely. He saw both our moral and aesthetic senses as gifts from God, ways in which the divine makes itself known. By cultivating those senses, we get closer to that divine source, to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
It's really remarkable how he brings all these threads together, philosophy, religion, ethics, aesthetics, into such a complete and compelling vision of how to live a good life.
He was a visionary centuries ahead of his time, and his work gives us a roadmap for dealing with the difficulties of life, finding meaning and purpose in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming.
I'm starting to understand why you're so passionate about Shaftesbury. He's not just offering a philosophical system, but a whole way of being in the world, how we relate to ourselves, others, and the universe itself.
Beautifully put. That's what makes studying him so rewarding. He challenges us to think differently, to see the world in new ways, and to aim for a life that is both beautiful and virtuous.
I'm feeling inspired. But before we wrap up, there's one more aspect I'm curious about. His ideas about the self and the search for self-knowledge. He seemed to have some pretty radical ideas about what makes a life truly authentic and fulfilling.
You're right. That's another area where Shaftesbury really shines. He was grappling with questions about identity and authenticity that we're still dealing with today. He challenged the conventional wisdom of his time and offered a truly groundbreaking vision of what it means to live a life true to yourself.
I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But maybe we should save it for our next segment. We've covered so much already. I need a minute to process all these incredible ideas.
I understand. It's a lot to take in, but that's the beauty of Shaftesbury's work. It's rich, complex, and constantly pushing us to think deeper and see the world in new ways.
Well, I'm hooked. I'm eager to hear more about his thoughts on the self and what he had to say about living an authentic life.
We'll pick up right there in our next segment. Get ready for a deep dive into the heart of Shaftesbury's vision of the self.
Okay, so part 3. The final piece of this Shaftesbury puzzle, his ideas about the self. It's something philosophers have been debating forever, and from what I've seen, Shaftesbury had some pretty unique thoughts about it.
Oh, he did. And what's really interesting is how his views on the self connect back to all the stuff we've talked about, ethics, aesthetics, even his religious views. It all fits together really beautifully.
All right, I'm all ears. Give me the Shaftesbury take on the self.
So for him, the self isn't this fixed, static thing. It's not something you're just born with and then passively live out. It's more like an ongoing project, something you actively create through choices, actions, even your relationships with the world around you.
So it's not about discovering some hidden true self that already exists inside you. It's about shaping and molding who you become.
Exactly. He believed we have a responsibility to cultivate ourselves, become the best version we can be. But it's not about chasing any random desire or whim. It's about aligning ourselves with what's truly good and beautiful, with that harmony he talked about, that order he saw in the universe and in us.
That sounds a lot like his ideas about virtue. It's not just about rules, but developing a certain character, a way of being that reflects those deeper principles, harmony and balance.
You got it. And here's where his aesthetics come in again. Remember, he thought beauty and goodness were inseparable. So, cultivating our sense of beauty, our appreciation for what's harmonious, actually helps us develop a better character.
So it's not about looking good on the outside. It's about having an inner beauty that reflects that unity, that design he saw in nature and the cosmos.
Right. A truly beautiful self, for Shaftesbury, is one that's in harmony with itself and its surroundings. It embodies balance, proportion, integrity, those things he considered the foundation of all that's good and true.
Like a pretty high standard he's setting.
Yeah.
But it's inspiring too. It's like he's saying we can all become works of art, not just literally, but in the way we live.
What a great way to put it. And I think that's the main takeaway from Shaftesbury. It's a call to action, an invitation to create ourselves and shape the world around us based on those principles of beauty, goodness, and truth. He saw those as fundamental to being human.
So we're not just passively accepting who we are or how things are. It's about striving to be better, to create more beauty and harmony in our own lives and in the world.
Absolutely. And that takes effort, attention. It's a lifelong journey of cultivating ourselves, refining our tastes, learning more, getting closer to what's truly good and beautiful.
This reminds me of what we were saying about happiness, how it doesn't come from chasing fleeting pleasure, but from aligning ourselves with virtue, with that inner harmony he was so focused on.
You're making the connections perfectly. That's at the heart of Shaftesbury's thinking. A life well lived, full of purpose and meaning, based on our ability to recognize and appreciate what's good, beautiful, and true.
I'll admit, I'm a bit overwhelmed by all this. It's a lot to process, a lot to unpack, but it's exciting too. A whole new perspective on the world, on myself, on what's possible.
I know what you mean. Shaftesbury's work is like that. It's a constant challenge, making us think deeper, question things, and strive for a better way of living.
Well, I think we've done a good job with this deep dive. We've explored his ideas on virtue, beauty, religion, politics, even that controversial idea about using ridicule. And we've seen how it all connects to his vision of the self as a work in progress, a continual effort to become better and find harmony.
And what's really remarkable is how relevant his ideas are today. He speaks to our deep desire for meaning, for purpose, for connection, and offers us a path forward, a way to face life's complexities with wisdom, grace, and a commitment to making the world a more beautiful and harmonious place.
Couldn't have said it better. To our listeners, I really encourage you to explore Shaftesbury's work. You might be surprised by how much a 17th century philosopher can teach us about living well in the 21st.
Who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to bring a little more beauty and goodness into your life and the world.
That's a great thought to end on. Until next time, keep exploring, keep seeking those hidden gems of wisdom, and keep striving to make the world a more beautiful and harmonious place.